Thank you very much. First of all, I'm not retired. I work. I am still a therapist, and some of the facts are right, some are not. I have no idea who wrote them, but I'd like to make something why I speak. Today is a very, very important day in my life and in life of all survivors from Auschwitz, because if the Russians had not come that day or come a week later, none of us would have been here, because at the very end, the Germans speeded up the killing machine to get as many of us, to get rid of us as many as possible. I also want you to know that it's not just my story. It's a story of the 1.5 million children that didn't make it, who were murdered, gassed, starved to death, drowned, all kinds of ways to get rid of them. Um, and I'm telling their story because I just survived through luck. My parents, some of my parents' ingenuity, but a lot of luck. So I'm going to go, I'm going to take you through different things. Uh, People are going to ask me, how can a child remember so much? Well, I can tell you, I remember because I was a lot with my mother, and my mother verified everything I saw. She never said to me, "Oh no," I'm sure there are different parenting styles, and there are people who protect their children by saying, "Oh, don't look." Some people don't even take their children to a funeral parlor, or don't look, don't do that. No, my mother just felt just the opposite. She thought the more I know, the more I understand, the more I'll be able to protect myself when she isn't with me. So my first memories, um, I knew nothing before the war. No, so if you ask me about it, I'll say I don't know. I can tell you the stories my father told me and my mother, but I was born in 38. The war started in 39. I was a year old, and at the age of 2, I was already in a ghetto. Tomaszow Mazowiecki was a town of about 30, 40,000 people. It was not a shtetl. It was a pretty big town in Poland at that time. It's about a half hour from Lodz and about 2 hours from Warsaw. It's central Poland, and it had a very thriving Jewish community. My family lived in Poland for 200 years. Um, Parents, grandparents, great grandparents. My mother's family came from a Hasidim. They were Gera Hasidim. They had very large families and children and so forth. Of course, I don't know any of them. Um, when I was 2, we were put into a ghetto, and I do remember only my mother's grandmother and a little bit. Sorry, my mother's mother, my grandmother, and a little bit of my father's father, my paternal grandfather, very slightly, because they were killed in the beginning of the war. Now, the first thing when the Germans came into our town, the first thing they did, without asking any questions, if they killed all our leaders, means the rabbis. The rabbis were killed very quickly. The doctors, professionals, engineers, lawyers, they were people who were like teachers. They were shot within a very, very short time, maybe a month or 2 or 3 of arrival, because that's, by the way, I want to explain to you something. This style was not only in our town, it happened in every ghetto in Europe, because they had, look, in order to kill 6 million people, it's a big job. It's very hard to do it. So how did they do it? What is the psychological and the physical way that Hitler managed to do it? The first thing he did, he killed our spirit. If you don't have a doctor, if you don't have a rabbi, if you don't have a teacher, my uncle James, who was an engineer and a lawyer, spoke German fluently because he was quite educated. He was shot almost right away. So in the beginning, when the war started, there were between 13,000 to 14,000 Jews, educated Jews. The town had a lot of factories. It had, after the war, my father told me they had gymnasium, Jewish, like a high school, college. They had theater. They had everything. At the end of the war, out of the 15,000 Jews, 200 came back. That's it. The entire population, almost the entire population, was just murdered in Treblinka. This was a town that went to Treblinka. You know, each town had a destination. That's how carefully they organized it. There were lots of children because the people were extremely religious, like my mother's family, 9 brothers and sisters. Each one had 10 children. Not a single person survived from her family. She was the only one from a family of 150 ultra Orthodox people, which is ironic because you say, well, those are the people who loved God most of all. Those are the people who prayed. Those are the people who had all the mitzvahs, and they were the first ones to kill. So again, you have to understand the issues of that. After that, the children were taken. Now, why the children? To this day, I'm wondering, why the children? Here's this gigantic, German army taking babies, pulling them apart, shooting them, drowning them, because they wanted there should be no witnesses. That was one of the mottos, by the way, no witnesses. So a child will grow up like me. You know, there were hundreds of children. 5 children were left at the end of the war, and I'm number 5. I'm the youngest. This morning, I called up my other friend who survived with me. She's 88, and we wished each other happy birthday. We do this every single year on today because today is really it's the beginning of our life after the war. And just a miracle that we both are alive. She doesn't talk anymore. So in a sense, I feel like I'm representing not only the 1.5 million children, but also the children that were killed in my town, in my town. So here we are. Let me just tell you, I remember the death of my grandmother. So they came in and we were in a ghetto and they just took her out. They shut her outside. It was every day, it was something that was done. So they got rid of people who were over 50 because there was elderly and kids up to the age of 14, 15. At 15, a child was a teenager, was considered working material, but only if the child was healthy and strong. So what happened every so often when a 12-year-old was tall, you would tell the 12-year-old, say that you're 14, say that because this was the cutoff point. This was the plan to get rid of everybody who had any kind of spiritual or effect on the community, and anybody who wasn't part of the workforce. My parents survived through a lot of things because they were healthy and they could work, but none of their families survived, because especially the older ones. And that was just the beginning that I'm telling you about. This is just the ghetto. The ghetto itself. We lived in a tiny room with a lot of people, and I was always under the table for all kinds of reasons. A, it was safe. B, it was no space. There was no other space. But I felt comfortable because I knew my parents were there. They would give me food. I could hear people being around, and this ghetto was so it was so crowded, but slowly most of the people were dying. They had a terrific typhus epidemic where most of the people were dying, and typhus or starvation and the shootings, just shootings with bullets. Now, you may be surprised, but bullets can't shoot so many people. So that people were dying. The deportation came later, like a year or two later, when they put them on those trains and they sent all those people to Treblinka. So they were orphans wandering around on the street because their parents had died of typhus or starvation. But the good thing about the ghetto was that I was with my parents, my mother, my father. I knew who they were. We interacted and so forth. I'm not going to go through all the things that happened there because I wish you would read the book. It's very hard for me. It's very hard for me to even explain to you because words are only words, and words are, you know, words pale to what really happened. It's just no way. And some of you who have families who've been there and told you about it, you know, there's just no way to express it. So my memory of the ghetto is that there were less and less people. And then one day they took us all out on the street there. It was near the church. I remember a church there. And they shot, just walking around, shot all kinds of people because the trains were waiting and they didn't have enough space in the cattle car, in the trains. So my mother was holding me and was protecting me. And we made it through that particular scene. And so they all went on the train to Treblinka. And they went, you know what's interesting? You go to you go to Treblinka because you're not an idiot. You hear about it, yet you pack a suitcase. You think you go to, it's very hard to believe that you're not human anymore. So you take stuff that you like with you. Well, before they got onto the train, the suitcases were taken away. And the people who were left, including me, my mother, and other people, they were left. We had to look through the clothing and clean it and wash it and sanitize it and so forth because it was sent to Germany. And I knew that. My mother was talking to me, and I wanted something from some clothes. There were little girls. I was very cold, and I said, "This is so pretty." She said, "No, no, we're not taking it. Somebody was killed for this. A little girl was killed. We're not benefiting." I learned right away what was going on. Anyhow, the town was emptied from either death, cholera, or Treblinka. And I heard, my father told me that 36 people were left. I don't know if there were 36 people. It's a fabulous Jewish, sort of a wonderful number, twice high. But then I heard maybe there were 50 people. Nobody kept score. We were left to clean up. We cleaned up, meaning that if the Red Cross or anybody would ever come and say, "Look, they're killing Jews," they will say, "Show us. There's nothing here. There is no blood. There is anything." So I remember walking with my mother and my father and all the other people who were left, cleanup squad. Look, when the Germans throughout the war used us to kill ourselves, they used us to kill our brothers, to kill our sisters. Do you know that when we were looking at the clothing afterwards and putting it in, children, boys, making some kind of an order among the mess of clothing, you could hear that one of the people recognized a member of her family, a child, or that she knew that this particular child she'll never see. And we still hope that something will happen, or she recognized a clothing of her mother. So the Germans never touched it. We did it. We did all under duress with, guns pointing. So I remember picking up pieces of people. It's a whole thing. And then it was all cleaned up. Took months, by the way. And then I remember my mother saying, "Oh, we're finished. We have no more jobs. They're going to kill us." But they didn't. They took us to the next step. It took us on a truck, and we came to a place called Starchowice, about 45 minutes away, 60 miles, I think, something like that, 40, 50. in a truck, and that was the labor camp. There, I was alone the whole day because my parents went every single morning to work in a factory. And you know, the factory itself was called the Yellow Death because they were working with ammunition. These were all factories all around. And that Starchowice had people from everywhere because they were only slave laborers. That's why they stayed alive. They didn't weren't sent to Treblinka because they needed workers. And I don't know how I, as a child, there were very few children, but I was with my mother, and there were some other people that I knew. I even knew them after the war because that little girl survived with me. And so every morning my parents left, and slowly, even that camp became less and less people. They were sending people away. As soon as they were finished with one project, and there were all these people working on this project, and they were useless, they took them out of the factory and sent them somewhere. Until we realized that there were less and less people. And every day I was wondering, will my parents come back from that factory? Because I heard stories that if they inhale that yellow powder in a certain way, their lungs, something would happen to I never understood the process. The lungs would just get inflamed and they would die. And when I went to visit after the war, because I couldn't believe all of this really happened, there's a gigantic communal grave right by the factory, and it is like a fence around it, and it says, these are the victims of the factory. That means every day the people would come into that factory and they shove all the dead who died during the workday into this communal grave, which is still there. And we said Kaddish, these people. Well, my parents survived, and then one day my father, or I think it was my father, who said hide her. It was the children's selection. It was a day where they didn't go to work, which was also unusual. And I didn't know, but we had a double crawl space. Either it was there before or my father created it. I really don't know. But he shoved me in there together with my mother. And I remember my mother holding my hand very tightly. So I should make no, I wouldn't have made any noise. I think by then I was about 5.5. I was pretty sophisticated. I knew the situation very well because nobody covered up what was going on. So I saw from the little window there, I saw that they were taking all the kids I used to play with. There weren't many on a truck, and I knew where they were going. They were going to be shot outside of town because, another thing, which what they did, they made able-bodied people. Now, my father was pretty strong. He must have been, I don't know, I never figured it out, maybe late 20s, early 30s. So he dug the graves, both for his parents. Oh, I didn't tell you that, but not only did I know when my grandma, my mother's mother, was killed, but I knew when my father's parents were shot, because he told my mother that he just put them on a truck, and he was crying because those communal graves were outside of the camp. They weren't part of it. You had to go to the field, so it wouldn't be that close. And that week, all those men, young men, would dig the graves for their parents. This time, they dug a grave for their children. Same people. So I was hidden there, and I wasn't found. And then my parents said to me, you can no longer be on the street. You shouldn't be seen. So I stayed in a dark room for quite a while. I don't know timing. I would say maybe a month, maybe 3 or 4 weeks. But I know that I was told never to go near the window. My mother had put like something over the window, but she told me that if I go too close, they may see my silhouette. When the German passed by, she says, so I couldn't even go near the window. And I understood it. I was 5.5. I couldn't read, I couldn't write, but I knew that my mom and my dad would come towards the end of the day and give me food. Because in the factory, they gave an extra meal. Usually you get a meal twice a day, in the morning a little bit and at night. Factory, they gave you lunch because they wanted you to work. The whole purpose was to help the war effort. So I had the extra food. And then one day, my mother comes, and then I didn't go out, by the way. Don't forget, they worked 7 days a week. It wasn't like they had a day off. So I always had to be in that room. And then one day she says to me, "We're not going to work today. You could go out." And I was amazed. I went out. The weather was beautiful. I was delighted. And my mother was packing. And I said, "What are you doing?" She says, "Oh, I'm packing a few things. We're going to Auschwitz." Now, I knew as a little girl, I knew about Auschwitz because it was a common words. Auschwitz, Majdanek, uh, Dachau. These were like normal things because I heard it all the time. I knew that Auschwitz was a place that you don't come back from. I knew that, but I don't think I really got it. And I said, "Oh, I don't really care if we're going anywhere as long as I'm not in the dark room anymore." And and I remember walking towards after she packed something. I don't know what she had inside there. Uh, we went to the trains, and there were very few children. Maybe I don't think there was even one. Maybe one girl was there, just me, the two of us, because she was also hidden probably. And and they separated men and women. That's the first time my parents were separated. Men went in the men of same train, by the way, but they went to a different, like a different carriage, or you want to call it different, um, a cattle car, and we went with the women. And then began the 36-hour trip. Now, I didn't know it was 36 hours. I found out later on from my parents. Of no water, no drink, no water, no food. But would you believe it that the thing that bothered me most of all was I couldn't go to the bathroom? Where to go to the bathroom? And I stood and I tried to ask my mother, "Where am I going to go? I got to go." And she couldn't hear me. It was so noisy. I remember she couldn't answer me. And then I realized I could smell it. Everybody was going where they stood. And you can imagine the fear and the anxiety. So I did the same thing. I had 36 hours. I had to go to the bathroom. So that was part of my ambiance, you may say, in this cattle car. And when I was tired, because I stood, you couldn't sit. I put my head against the woman in front of me because we were so close, and I fell asleep. And I slept standing. There all kinds of things happen in there, but I don't want to go into it really, unless you want to ask more questions. And then we arrived to Auschwitz. What scared was very bright day, lots of sunshine, and what scared me were the dogs. You know, it's interesting that I couldn't imagine death by gassing, but I could imagine being killed by a dog. That was like much more accessible to my mind as a child. I knew what a dog could do to you. I also saw dogs, killing people, but I never saw a person being gassed. So I couldn't really imagine that. And I said to my mother, "Oh, I'm going to be killed now, right? They're going to kill me." She said, "No." She said, "They are trained to kill if you run. Are you going to run?" I said, "No." And I said, "I'm going to stand very straight and very still." She was teaching me survival skills, follow the orders. And then I said, "What's the smell? What is now the smell inside the kettle covers? You can imagine feces and throwing up and everything, but that smell was different." And I said, "What is that?" And then she pointed to the smoke. She said, "They are burning people." I said, "They burning people?" She said, "Yes. First they gassing them, and then they burning them." I was 5 and a half, and I listened. and I listened, and I knew something, that if I follow rules, by the way, there were rules also in the labor camp, which I skipped because that she taught me. She every place we went, she taught me the rules of survival. One of them was have no eye contact with the Germans. No eye contact, she said, because they'll notice you. Don't look into their eyes. So I didn't. I was so frightened that I looked from the belt down, from the stomach down. Anyhow, they undressed us, and I don't know what clothes they gave, but right there at the train station, at the train, the train was in the back, we were in the front, and she heard the rules. I mean, she heard the orders. I didn't even know they were given orders. And then she said, I gotta see your father. Take this suitcase that she came with. Don't let anybody touch it. I want to tell you, my thought was this. I was 5 and a half. I said, nobody will dare take my suitcase because my mother told me that I have to watch it. I remember putting the hand very tightly on that suitcase. We still thought we were people. It's your property. The stuff, I don't know what was inside, probably some pictures or some bread, but the stuff was you. So she comes back and she says to me, your father is going to Dachau, and they tattooed him, and we're staying here. And she told me all kinds of atrocities that went on in his cattle car. But she told me his best friend was killed, strangled by somebody. So she didn't spare me one tiny bit, because she was afraid if she spares me, I'm going to feel safe and I won't be able to function and to protect myself. So after they took away my clothes and gave me something else. Was it like, I don't know where it was. It was very close to the train. They shaved my head, and I remember what I had braids, by the way, and I remember my braids falling, and the woman who shaved me was tall. She was Jewish, and she picked me up on a bench because she didn't want to bend down. So look how small I was. I had eye to eye with her standing on a bench. And she said to me, you poor child. I don't know what language. Must have been Polish, but I don't speak Polish at all. So all of a sudden I had no hair and all these women, and I'm looking for my mother. I can't find her because she was with somebody else who was shaving her. And because I couldn't recognize her, and I'm standing on all that hair. By now, I have my shoes are sort of very uncomfortable, like shoes I'd never had before. And I'm standing barefoot, and I get all this hair, and I'm trying to find her. And then she puts her head on my head, on my bald head, and said, "I'm here." And she takes my hand, and we walk into Auschwitz proper, through like a gate, it was like a fence with like a German, um it was like an outpost where they were standing with their machine guns. They were like those who were watching us all the time. So we get a middle bunk, a middle, or like a shelf, and then she starts teaching me again. And this is what she said to me. More people are going to come, so you'll have to be careful when you sleep, so you don't turn around too much. You've got to lie as still as possible, because they'll have to move also if you move. But the most important thing is you're going to get, she said, a bowl, a spoon, and a cup. And it's going to be tinned. She used the word blech, which is a Yiddish word. We must have been speaking Yiddish. And she said, listen, if you lose that, you will never get food. You will starve to death. Uh, you can't tell somebody, you can't go up to the person who gives out the food, ladles out the food, that you don't have your bowl. She won't give you anything to eat. And if somebody steals it, they will get 2 portions. They just put it into the bowl, no matter who's holding it. So, and she said, people steal. So I remember, I said, what are we going to do? So we figured out a way to hide it under our blankets and check it each time that it's there. I checked hers, she checked mine. She just taught me. But then the last thing, which I was more upset than anything else, You can't go to the bathroom, she said. I said, what do you mean I can't go to the bathroom? She said, only when we all go together. And we'll go in the morning and we'll go at night. And I said, what if I have to go in the middle of the day? She says, you can't or you'll die. They'll shoot you. That was the beginning of my worries about holding it in, learning, how to control your body because it was life or death. There's so many other things that I could talk about, but um, the only I'm going to tell you about that particular period is that my mother kept giving me her food, and I was starving even with her food. And I fell into one of, the bathrooms were like flat wooden, you must have seen it or something, with gigantic holes. The holes were so big that I went back there with my grandchildren. I have 6'2" grandchildren, boys, very big. They sat on those toilets and they said they could have fallen in. And here I am, 5.5, and I fell in. Then they said the whole job of taking me out and hosing me down, and the smell was there. On my whole body, no matter what we had no soap, of course. No matter what she did, I smelled of feces for a very long time. And then I must have gotten some kind of a bug because I got very ill. Now, illness in Auschwitz meant death. That's all. There was no, you're sick, you can't work, you die. So I tried to cover it up. And I tried, my eyes were full of pus, my teeth. I remember I'm not able to move my teeth. Apparently, later on, my mother told me I had scarlet fever and diphtheria together. Now, nowadays in America, you can die if you don't have penicillin. Those two diseases are lethal even now. I don't know how it happened. I survived, but they took me away from my mother. And that's when I went to the children's barrack. The children's called it Zigeunerlager. The children's camp, the gypsy camp, because they had killed 400,000 gypsies in a few days. They gassed them all. Gypsies lived in a gypsy camp. They were families. They weren't separated. Parents, children, grandparents. They killed them. They gassed them all together. Entire families went. So now they had space. And that's when I began a life of my own, without protection, without my mother. And I was with my mother for only about a month. And I was in Auschwitz I think about 6 months, 7 months. So the rest of the time, I was on my own with the other kids. And that's where I got my tattoo after I arrived. And I was taught, my number is 27,633. And I didn't know what that was because I couldn't, I didn't, I couldn't correspond the words with a number because I didn't know numbers. In fact, I had such a hard trouble learning numbers that even in Poland, at the age of 9 and 8, I couldn't get numbers. I couldn't get 7. I couldn't get 8. The numbers that were tattooed on my arm, I couldn't learn them. I had a block. My mother kept trying to teach me to count when we were already in Poland and liberated. Couldn't get it. I remember her Polish at the time, trying to teach it to me. I had a block against numbers. So when I was told I had to memorize it, the woman who tattooed me was also Jewish. Again, they used us. And she said this to me. I'm going to give you a very neat number. Now she had a chart to which she had to take the number from the chart. I guess my name was next to it because the Germans kept a record of a name and number. So next to my name was this number. She said, but listen, I'm going to make it very small for you. So if you ever survive, get yourself a long sleeve shirt and you won't be embarrassed. And I said, oh, I'll survive. That was a new idea. I didn't even think about it. And then she said to me, take a rag, put it in cold water, which there was water on the side, and press it very, very hard so it won't swell. If you rub it, it's going to swell and hurt you. Now tell me your name again. I told her my name. No, no, no. I want this name. So I couldn't remember it. So she gave me, it was like a mantra because I didn't understand what I was saying. And I remember walking around the barracks saying it over again, saying until I really memorized it very well because it was my identity. And what happened was if you didn't answer here, when they call your number, everybody would be punished. It wasn't just me. The rest of the kids were also punished. So we all, let me tell you, within a week or two, all of us knew our numbers. Oh, what can I tell you? Um, I did go to the crematorium. I don't know what happened. We waited to be gassed. Something happened. The guy who wrote the book with me, by the way, here is a picture of my book, The Daughter of Auschwitz. That's the American. It's in other languages too. He tried to find out what happened. First, it was very hard to have the day because I didn't know exactly what day I went to the crematorium. But he's a researcher. He um he works for PBS. He is their European correspondent. He couldn't find out either. He thinks that it could have why didn't they gas me that day? Look at the miracles. As soon as I arrived, I should have been killed right away because everybody under 14 and women with children and people over 50 were killed. They never even got into Auschwitz. They were killed right there. There was a whole system. I somehow made it. Somebody told me I may have arrived on a Sunday. And, being Christian, they didn't want to work so hard. So they said, they'll take me into the barracks. I mean, Birkenau was nothing but a death machine. So I'll get killed next a month later, a week later. So I survived that. And now I am I cannot even describe the waiting room. We were in the waiting space, the gas chamber, and they never opened it up. And I don't know what happened. And they yelled and screamed. I don't know. We were there for hours, and we went back. Going back and forth, we passed a women's camp. The women were all separate. I didn't see any men. Men were in a completely different section in Auschwitz. So I hear my name, and nobody knew my name. So I said, "Must be my mother." And going there to the crematorium, she said, "Where are you going?" I said, "To the crematorium." And she said, and she started crying, and all the women, they were like screaming. I remember turning to the girl next to me and saying, why are they crying? Doesn't every Jewish child go to the crematorium? It was like breathing, you know?
Requested a prescription refill, and I've done
Somebody's
so before,
talking.
and I'm
Am I
not sure
hearing
what's like
something?
the protocol. Like I
Okay.
requested, and I don't get an answer.
Am I okay? Yeah, it's quiet. Okay. Then coming back, I heard again the same cry. My mother, I heard her voice. And she said, and I said, she said, "What happened?" I said, "They couldn't do it this time. They'll do it next time." As if an apology. Because I thought as a child, everybody goes. The barrack next to me went. A few days earlier, I know because I was a kind of a kid who, if I was able to, I would look. I was very um it's not that I wasn't scared, and it's not that I didn't obey rules, but I was extremely curious. So I went to see the other barrack was completely empty, and I said, "Oh, where are they? I haven't seen them for days." You could see kids running around. I said, they went to the crematorium." So I knew when our turn was there. Okay, I don't know how long after. I have no idea. All of a sudden, my mother appears. I don't recognize her at all. She looks terrible. You know, after a while, all of us forgot we had parents. Nobody cried for their parents. We just knew, you know, That's the way it is. That's what life is for us. Don't forget, we were all kids. We were like adults and we didn't know life before. So she looks terrible. And this is what she says to me. They are getting us all to go to leave the camp because the Russians are coming. Um, they're all going to make us walk very far, she said, and it's snowing outside, very, very far. And she said, I can't walk. Look at me. I'm going to be shot. I'm going to be killed. I want to tell you something that something like 95% of the people died on the march, which was later known as the gas march. She said, would you die with me in Auschwitz? I was delighted. Yeah, I said, yeah, I'll die with you. And then she said, I'm afraid that if you go on that death march, no, she didn't say death march, or if you go with all these people, you'll survive. And she said, this is not a world for children. I don't want you to survive on your own. I want you to die with me here. She took my hand, and by then there was chaos because the Russians were on the way. The person who would be our keeper, like also Jewish, by the way, the capo or whatever she was, or the black elders, there were like different levels of people there. She disappeared, so that the doors were open. So my mother took me and she found like an infirmary, a hospital, and she looked around and she found a corpse that had just died because the person was so warm. She touched every corpse. It was all women, and she found a corpse that she liked, and she told me to climb in, took off my shoes, and she managed me in such a way where she covered me up, and you could only see the corpse. And I knew what she wanted. She didn't want me to breathe in such a way so that the blanket doesn't move. So I breathe into the floor. She put my face into the floor. I remember she manipulated me, and then she said, "Don't get uncovered, no matter what you hear."
Holocaust Remembrance Day.
Oh, yeah.
They're hiding a child. The Russians are coming.
What happened to voice?
Sorry,
Oh.
she said that I will be the only one to uncover you.
You're muted.
You're muted. Tova, I can't seem to unmute you.
Can you hear me?
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay,
Technology.
sorry.
I don't know. I'm always shocked that it works. So and then within
We missed a part of it. We missed the last.
Sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes, but
Okay.
we
I can hear you too. Within a very short time, the Russians came, and this is the day of today, January 27th, 1945. We were liberated. And one of the things that my mother used to say to me after we liberation, she said, you will see what a wonderful family you come from. You're going to have grandparents and brothers and sisters. And it didn't occur to her that no one was coming back. It didn't even, anyhow, when she realized what was happening, she got into a serious depression. And at the age of 45, she died in America. She didn't want to live anymore. She said that she can't live having. Once she saved me, there was no purpose to her life as far as she saw it, since her whole family was gone. So that's part of my story. I couldn't go through everything, obviously. I don't even know how much time I this all took, oh, I don't have my, oh, I see, I have it here, okay. I'm sorry, it took a little more than expected. It's took
That's
about-
okay.
So if you have any questions,
Questions? Are you ready?
I would be happy to answer if I can, you know.
Let's go to gallery. Is not showing. There you are. So I don't see anything in the chat, but if you would like
Okay.
to unmute yourself and mute you. And we're well.
Can you, Tova, can you hear me?
Yeah, you are, I can't be, you're not Heather, right?
No, I'm Howard.
And you're not Ingrid, and Howard is not showing, but I believe you that
Okay.
you're Howard.
But you can hear me. That's
Yeah,
fine.
absolutely.
I don't live far from you. I live in Manalapan. My mom and
Oh,
dad live,
Penelope, you're very close by.
right,
yeah.
my mom and dad and my brother and sister-in-law, our parents lived in Lakehurst for many years.
Lakehurst.
Both our parents were survivors. So a couple questions. Do you remember how the Russians treated the prisoners when they came in? Was it a
Excuse me,
festival?
Wait a minute. Are you talking us as prisoners, the survivors?
Yes.
Okay, I like to use the word survivors and not
Yes.
prisoners. Yeah, well, in the beginning, they were fabulous. They set up kitchens and they fed us inappropriate food, but that's not their fault because they didn't know any better. Many people died from dysentery because they overate. And my mother was very, very careful. She wouldn't let me have anything into my mouth without her approval. They baked bread. They had hospitals. They opened up some of the German storage places. So we had clothing. They treated us extremely well. They were very loud. They loved the children. They'd kiss us. They would throw that. They threw me out up in the air. I was, I guess, light enough or something. But we were there for a few months because we didn't know where to go. Things changed a little bit because they became they drank a lot. Not in the beginning that I know of, you know. I mean, but my mother kept saying that we can't stay here, and she was afraid to go to sleep. A lot of rape, a lot of rape. And I didn't know it was rape, by the way. I just knew that she, in the middle of the night, she'd say, get up, we got to get out. And sometimes we would sleep in our clothes so we could run. And I said, where are you running? What are you running? These are our friends. She didn't tell me. She said, it's not good for us. And people had to leave. She said to me, we have to leave. This is unsafe, which was very weird to me because I thought here we were liberated with these wonderful people who kissed us and sang to us. They had parties every night, and they're very happy people. They were very happy, and they treated us and they gave us everything, food. I mean, I couldn't eat the food, but fresh bread every day. It was like a party until it wasn't. Until they became something happened within a month. They became like a Russian tough army, and that's what we. And then Red Cross gave us. I just had it here somewhere. Oh, I don't know where. Gave us a pass to leave, and to go oh, here it is. Let me show it to you. I don't take it out of my house, but I could, how can I do? But I could, in my house, I could show it because it's the original. They give us this, and on it, it says my mother's number also, and says that mother and daughter, so that we can use this and travel wherever we wanted to travel for free. So.
Yeah, our mother came into Auschwitz probably around the same time as you. They came from Krakow.
Oh, they came
And
from
her
Krakow. Yeah.
number was 22,351A. But she
Yeah.
went on the death march. She was heralded out of there, herded out in mid-note January, and ended up in liberated from Bergen-Belsen.
Yeah, but that's what my mother tried to avoid.
Yeah.
She was afraid that she will die. She didn't want me to be left alone. She really was positive she would die. She died when I was 18. You know, when she felt already I was safe, I was in America, I was in high school, I was going to college, starting college. That's when she thought she could die.
And here you are.
And here am I. Oh, and my grandson. Listen, this book is into 19 languages, including Chinese. I just got a Chinese letter saying that they want to do it in Chinese. And my grandchild put me on TikTok. 50 million people watched me.
I know.
Wow.
And yesterday I had a ceremony at our JCC in Bridgewater. I guess you know Bridgewater. It's not far from you, really. And symbolically, I gave my microphone to him. I said, "This is now he's 17. I said, you know, the way Queen and the King gives it to the next generation, this is yours." And he's going to continue telling this story and so forth. So I'm
That's
very
important.
I'm very,
for you.
very, I mean,
That's
it's
your
not-
legacy. That's your legacy, Tova.
Yeah, but it's not my legacy.
And
It's not-
actually, Howard, you do the same thing. Your
it's
parents.
the Jewish people legacy. It's not my legacy. I'm here just as a conduit. I'm just saying it. I mean, what will happen after us? I mean, so he's 17, he's going to college, and he's going to a place, Wash U, where they have a very gigantic program on the Holocaust, and he's going to participate in that. So what I'm saying is, okay, all of you here will know. What about the next 2 or 3 or 4 generations? You're at the JCC in Manalapan. I didn't remember.
No. I'm involved with an organization in Middletown, Change, the Center for Holocaust, Human Rights, and Genocide.
Mm.
That's how I keep the candle lit.
Okay, and you have kids, whatever? Do you?
I have grandchildren. I have 3 boys, and I have 6 grandchildren, and just had the first bar mitzvah.
Mazel tov. Did he?
I wish my mom and dad were here to see it, but I guess they're watching.
Absolutely. Do you? Are they involved? Are your kids involved in all this?
They're very, very aware of it, but they're busy with their lives. I didn't get involved until I was probably 40 years old, the way that I am now. Life gets in the way, but it's in our blood.
I just want to tell you, you were close to your parents, so it was okay to be involved. They are very far from it. They really, all my kids went on I have 8 grandchildren. They went on the March of the Living.
Okay.
Must, to me, that's a must, you know, but I don't know. They have to agree. You can't, they don't always agree, you know, and they all went to Israel. Every one of them spend a long time in Israel every summer for some program. Got to be involved because it's so,
I agree.
you know what my rabbi said today, which I love? He's not afraid of anti-Semitism. He is afraid of philo-Semitism, which means the love by the non-Jews and the intermarriage. That we are accepted in many circles, which is great on one hand. On the other hand, the intermarriage, and our children will know very little about Judaism. So that's really
Very true.
So that's one of the things I do when I go around. I sometimes say things that people don't like, but okay.